All right, I wanted to analyze Donna tonight. So this, the melody in particular. So this is a tune that I think a lot of us learn as kind of an etude and sort of a muscle memory thing once you get it, and you can fly through it at a fast tempo. But by doing that, I think you can kind of overlook that there's a lot of good vocabulary stuff in the melody. In fact, I went through it and did an analysis, and I found pretty much every bar is some good stuff that we can use as part of our bebop language. So right here I have the melody, which you probably know the melody if you're watching this, or at least have heard it. But if not, it's from recorded first in 1947 by Charlie Parker and Miles Davis, and is general consensus is that Miles Davis wrote the line, and I agree with that, because even though Charlie Parker's name is usually on the chart, because it doesn't really sound like anything else Charlie Parker wrote rhythmically. So we're going to say Miles wrote it, but that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is to dig into this material. So here's just the line, just at a glance. If you don't know it, definitely check out the original recording. You can find it online, of course. But now I'm going to slide over to my analysis stuff. So I just kind of went through the melody bar by bar to find what I could find. And so if we're familiar with that opening line, so what that is it's a descending major scale. I'll explain as we go, but this is just, if you look at this, a descending A flat major scale with a chromatic passing tone. I have that highlighted here. So it's just descending down to A flat major scale. And then we have this passing tone. So that would be straight down the scale. And so if we were to label, we want to think about chord tones, what beat the different chord tones are on. So if we can label that, like, here's the 1, scale degree 1 on beat 1. Then 6 on beat 2. We think of 6 as a chord tone. 5 on beat 3. 3 on beat 4. And 1 on beat 1. So we've got chord tones on the beat. And yeah, for a 1 chord, 1 major, we're going to think of 6. We're going to think of the chord tones as 1, 3, 5, and 6. So this is a passing tone. This is our chromatic passing tone. Passing tone. All right, everything is passing tone on the upbeats. And so descending major scale, the chromatic passing tone, which is sometimes also referred to as the major bebop scale. Bebop scale being this idea of taking a scale and adding 1 note, making a 7-note scale, an 8-note scale, in order to have the chord tones land on the beat in that way. So that's that. Now if we look at this next example down below here, this is a little bit closer to what it is actually on the recording. So it's, instead of just going straight down the scale, we have this little triplet figure at the beginning. Booby up. And I'm calling that a mordent. So it's the same as the line above, but with this mordent. And mordent is this term for like a kind of a quick trill. You can hear it. It's written here as a triplet, but if you listen to it, I think you would find it in like Baroque music and stuff like that. It's just kind of like on harpsichord or something. It's just as quick, like blia, blia. It's like a 1-note trill. Blia da ba da. So in jazz, I think it can be interpreted in different ways, like triplet, da da, or it can be like more of like a 1/8 and 2/16, just depending on the tempo interpretation. But the general idea is just this kind of quick trill and then continuing on. So functionally, though, it's the same as above. because you can see that on beat 2 and on through the rest, we saw that same pattern where it's 6 chord. The 6 is on the beat 2 and 5th is on beat 3. We've got a chromatic passing tone, etc. Okay. So then this next example, bar 5 or line 3 here, same thing, except now the last note is altered to land on the 3rd of the dominant chord. So instead of going straight down the A flat major scale, we go down, we alter that last note to fit the next chord, the F7 chord. So it's straight down this major scale with that chromatic passing tone or major bebop scale, but it's altering that last note, raising it a half step to fit the F7, which has a natural as the 3rd of that chord. And one thing that we'll notice as we go on is that very frequently we're landing on the 3rd as we move into a chord change. And that really defines the sound of the chord progression. We really can hear the chord when we hit that 3rd strongly on the downbeat. Okay, because if we hadn't altered that to A natural and just kept it as A flat, then that would fit over a diatonic 6 chord, which would be F minor instead of F dominant 7. But in the case of this progression, it's F dominant 7. All right, so this next example, bar 7, is as the melody continues, it plays. Here's that F7 that we were just talking about, and now I'm calling it a pivot arpeggio. So pivoting meaning that here we have the 3 of that chord, then 5, 7, 1. So the pivot is that we're leaping down here. So instead of just continuing up, 3, 5, 7, 1 like that, we have the 3 and then we leap down and go back up the other direction. So call that pivoting. So it's sort of an arpeggio, but it just gives it a little bit more interesting melodic contour by not just going straight up, but having a leap down and then filling back in. Then this next little figure here, I'm calling flat 9, sharp 9, bop mordent. I've never heard anybody refer to it that way before, but still that's that mordent idea of the bebop, but when the sound of flat 9, sharp 9 in that triplet context is so characteristic of this style, that I decided why not call it that. So maybe somebody else already has, but if we have the F7 and then that flat 9, sharp 9, and then here we go again, the playing into the 3rd of that dominant chord. So very familiar sound. We'll keep noticing those 3rds. So now then it arpeggiates up, 3 arpeggio, and then just kind of filling in, landing on a chord tone, 5. All right. Let's move on now. Let's clear all that out. So here, this next little figure, so I have a note here that the previous examples, first 3 bars of melody are displaced by 2 beats in the actual composition. So that's kind of interesting that it's, I have all of this stuff starting on the beat, starting on beat 1, but if you look at the melody of the tune over here, the melody of Donna Lee starts on beat 2, but if you check out where it sounds like the chords are changing, so we're talking about how we're playing into the 3rd of the various chords, so the 3rd of F7 is here, and the 3rd of B flat 7 is here. So it sounds like the line, that whole first phrase is displaced by 2 beats. It sounds like, even though, you know, the rhythm section is sounding the chord changes like on the downbeats more or less, but the line itself, you can imagine that if this line started, if this was moved over 2 beats to beat 1, then that line, then it would sound like this was all A flat, and that would be landing on F there, and then this would all be the F sound, and then we'd be landing on B flat there, and this would all be the B flat sound. So just for those first few measures, that's what it sounds like. I don't know why it worked out that way. I'm sure it was intentional, but you know, and that doesn't play out for the rest of the melody, but especially for those first few bars, it feels like it's all displaced by 2 beats. All right, that's my take on it anyway. So to go back to the analysis, here, playing into the next phrase, we have this chromatic enclosure. So enclosure means taking one note from above and one note from below as we approach a particular target note. So we have E natural is our approach from above, and D from below, and they both encircle this E flat. So E is a half step above E flat, D is a half step below. We call that chromatic enclosure because it's chromatic because they're both on both sides of it's a just a half step away. All right, so this next figure, arpeggio up to the 11 with chromatic approach note. So that meaning the 11th of this B flat minor chord, which is here, right? So that's nice big arpeggio where it goes 1, flat 3, 5, flat 7, 9, 11, and then this is our chromatic approach note. So A natural approaching B flat chromatically. Chromatic approach note. And then this next phrase, let's see. That one took me a second to figure out what was going on, because usually it's just, if you look at the chart again, oops, gotta clear all that out now. If you look at the chart, it's right here. That's what I had, that's what I was playing before. So on the chart, it's like this whole bar is played over E flat 7, but if you actually look at the phrase, what makes more sense to think of is these first 2 beats as being over B flat minor, and these 2 beats being over E flat 7. So instead of just playing E flat 7 for the whole bar, the line suggests 2 beats of E flat minor 7, 2 beats of E flat 7. So rather than just doing like 1 bar of B flat minor, 1 bar of E flat, it suggests more like this is all B flat minor, and then these 2 beats are E flat 7 before resolving to A flat. So with thinking of it that way, if we go back over here, this clearly sounds like B flat minor, right? So it's just a pretty straightforward arpeggio pivoting, our pivot idea again. So B, that would be our flat 3, then our pivot down to 5, 7, 9. This is an interesting little segment right here. Colorful. We go B natural. So if we look at it in the context of E flat 7, so B natural would be, we could call it flat 13. E natural, we could call that flat 9. Then E flat is 1, D flat, flat 7. So we've got this descending line that has flat 13 and flat 9, and you know, you can interpret that in various ways as being derived from different scales and things. One way you can think of it is that it's using the what we call the altered scale. So that would be like playing E melodic minor over E flat 7 gives you the altered scale, and that would be a pretty common choice to play over a dominant chord that's resolving down by a fifth. Where are they thinking of that back in 1947, I could have no idea, but people think of it that way now. I'm always interested to know what people were thinking about with scales and things back then, but I think it's a lot of speculation. All right, and then it just resolves, check it out, to the third of the A flat chord. Once again, resolving to the third. Arpeggiate up, and then here we have another enclosure, which is, right, G is from below, B flat from above, targeting the A flat there. So that's similar shape to this. Not exactly the same, but we have this arpeggio up and then some low resolution going down a little bit. Okay, moving on. So now we're over here. So here's that altered scale I was talking about. Oop. So we're saying E flat altered, which is like I was saying, it's like E melodic minor. So the idea with altered is you can if you see the E flat 7 chord and just go up a half 7, play melodic minor. So starting here, that's E, and then you play a melodic minor. That gives you those notes. So these are that's that phrase again, just on its own. So altered scale sound resolving to third. So here's, you know, that note. Here's that note. Right, so all these notes are from this scale. Again, I don't know if that's how people were thinking about it, but it's one way to interpret it. All right, and then in this next bit, we have just kind of a colorful voice leading thing. So we're going, we lead into this arpeggio, you know, a nice little scale line on beat 4, leading into this arpeggio up to E flat 7, E flat minor 7, I mean. So, and it's arpeggio from starting on the third of that chord. So call that flat 3, 5, 7, 9, or flat 7, I should say. And that puts us in this nice position where we get this voice leading. So when we go up to 9 on the minor chord, on the 2 chord, and this is in the context of 2-5-1, then you get this nice kind of chromatic voice leading option. So we call it, labeled here as 9, going to sharp 5 to 9. So this, here's our 9. Here, this now right here, sharp 5 of the A flat 7. So it gives it kind of like a A flat augmented sound. So we could label it as A flat 7 sharp 5 if we wanted to. And then moving, you know, a little bit of call it indirect resolution, but ultimately moving here to the 9 of D flat. So it's just like a really pretty sound. Like if we were to just focus on that. So the line is like that. But if we just focused on those 3 notes in particular, so over E flat minor, here's the 9, and then over the A flat, and then over the D flat. So that's just a nice little voice leading to be aware of, and it's set up by playing this ascending arpeggio that starts on the third of the minor of the 2 chord and goes up to the 9, and then set up to move through this colorful kind of upper extension voice leading line, meaning the 9 is one of the upper extensions, and then it kind of sets up to do this chromatic thing going down. All right, so next, this idea of the backdoor cadence. For the 4 chord in the key of A flat, D flat, going to flat 7, 7, G flat, resolving to A. That's referred to as backdoor cadence in books by Jerry Coker and stuff like that. It's useful though to think about it as 4. So this is our 4 chord. This is flat 7, 7. but from a functional standpoint, it's useful to think of it as 4 minor. So in other words, you can think of G flat 7 as D flat minor, then resolving to A flat. So 4 to 4 minor to A flat, and that gives you some, like, you know, for terms of what scales go there, what chord tones to emphasize. So I think that typically, at least in this period, when I listen to Charlie Parker and other players, you know, for this type of move over this 4 chord, over the G flat 7, they're usually playing minor ideas that relate to 4 minor. So it's like play a 4 major type of idea here, then a 4 minor type of idea here, and then resolve to 1. So if you look at these notes here that I have highlighted, that it's like, so G flat 7, there you go. So you can think of that E natural as part of the, or I have it written as F flat, but that's like the minor third of the 4 minor. So think of it as like D flat major, D flat minor, A flat. So it's kind of just like that, but with a different bass note. That would be G flat, and then resolving. So functionally the same. And ultimately they do take the same scale, but it's just kind of thinking of it from a different root perspective. Alright, so moving on. I just have written here that we continue to have resolution to the third of the various chords, right? Third of F7, third of B flat. Here we have another example of our flat 9, sharp 9 bop mordent. Alright, so now the next line, B flat 7, here's an enclosure, right, from above and below, but then we have what seems to me to be called a disguised honeysuckle rose motif. So the tune Honeysuckle Rose, I think, was already pretty popular and would be quoted a lot by people, and it just seems to pop up in both in melodies and in people's improvisations. So if you don't know Honeysuckle Rose, that's be-ba-do-bo-dee, be-ba-do-do-da, be-ba-do-do-dee-dee-dee, be-ba-do-ba-ba-da. And so here that is played of like just this part right here. Ba-ba-boo-ba-ba. And then we get this nice ascending line landing on sharp 11 of the chord of the B flat 7, E natural. So that's the first time in the melody that we've landed on sharp 11, so it kind of jumps out. Over B flat. Definitely jumps out. And then we have the Honeysuckle Rose motif again, starting on a different note. So I don't know if, you know, if they're just quoting the melody of that tune, or if that was already a motif that was in wide use that then, you know, Fats Waller adopted and made into his Honeysuckle Rose tune. So either way, it shows up a lot, so I just noticed it. Alright, so then we just have some more arpeggio stuff. Another flat 9, sharp 9 bop mordent that's showing up all over the place. Might as well point out that we have another instance of landing on the third of the chord there, another instance of landing on the third of the chord there. Seems like almost every bar we're landing on the third, right? Third, third. Okay. Let's clear all that. All right, now we're kind of getting towards the end of the line. So we got this, we're kind of shifting to like minor, relative minor, F minor land. Which have the scale line, like a 2-5-1 heading into F minor. Here's another couple of these mordents in this measure. So we have the one we're used to seeing, which is flat 9, sharp 9. This one is on a different pitch, different scale degree, but it's you know, the same idea. Now we have this nice little enclosure again, so enclosures everywhere. Now we've landed on the root, so that gives it a little bit more of a sense of just like coming to rest. But shortly thereafter, it's going to go into this really active chromatic line here. Mordent. So this line, there's a lot going on there, but it's really just based off of this pretty simple line over these chords, which sounds like so. Alright, so if this is the active line is so if we just kind of like look at the notes that are emphasized on the beat, so C, and then D on beat 3, E on the downbeat in the next measure, and then D, so everything else is just kind of like, you know, chromatically filling in. It's a nice sound, and just kind of the only place in the line where that happens. So that's a little bit, this is a stretch, but maybe that's one of the things that says that it's a Miles Davis thing, because he was, you know, known for these kind of chromatic, snaky lines, especially somewhat later in his career. But like I said, judge for yourself. That's a bit of a, that's definitely speculation. All right, so now moving on, we're getting almost to the end of the line. This next part of the line, over a diminished chord. So B diminished is like a substitution, or it can be exchanged for G7 flat 9. So it's like the B diminished is leading to C minor 7, but B diminished is like the same notes as G7 flat 9, which is the 5 chord leading to C minor. So if we think of it that way, then it's just, you know, ascending and arpeggio. Think about chord tones. You can either think about these as chord tones of the diminished chord, right, just one. But I think it's more useful to think of it as chord tones of the, well, either way. But if you were to think of it as chord tones of the G7 chord, then it would be like 3, 5, flat 7. Then here would be that flat 9, etc., all the way up to the root, and then descending down until we get to this last bit of the melody, which is the 3, 6, 2, 5. I said the line passes through the third of each chord, meaning this is the third of C minor 7. Here's the third of F7. Here's the third of B flat 7, B flat minor 7. So it's just a straight descending line. Worth pointing out that we have here, this would be like flat 9 as a passing tone. That would be typical of a descending line that's kind of heading towards a minor chord, 5 chord heading towards a minor chord. And then just a simple, you know, arpeggio up, scale down, which is common. Arpeggio up, scale down, so up from the third. And then scale down, 5, bip-a-dip-a-dap, and then we land on the root, which definitely gives it a sense of finality and resolution. And that is Donna Lee. So yeah, like every bar is good stuff, like I was saying at the beginning, rather than just kind of getting the thing of just using it as an etude and getting into muscle memory. I think by analyzing it this way, then we can be like, all right, here's all this great stuff that we can find and integrate into our own playing, improvisationally, and then maybe even by understanding how things work, how things function harmonically and everything like that, then maybe we might even just take the melody itself and embellish it in different ways. It doesn't have to be just this little literal reading. So I can imagine getting into it, maybe slowing the melody down and, you know, adding some different passing tones and things that work around the original melody. You know, the possibilities are endless, but great tune, that's for sure. And I suppose I'll leave it there. Thanks for hanging in. This has been Donna. See you next time. Good night.